So, I am Rick Heineman. I teach biology at Kutztown University, and I figured by the time we got to me, we would probably have heard a lot about how to write parodies and things like that. So I decided to focus on something that I do that I haven't seen anyone else do, which is musical annotation. So, there we go. Here's the problem. It is a little tough to write a really good and really information-rich parody. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, and probably many of you are amazing songwriters and can always succeed in this, but I have difficulty fitting everything in. So here's a little phrase from biology: semi-conservative replication. That is the method by which DNA is copied, and there's been a number of songs I've written that could have benefited from the inclusion of this term, but it's a very long term. It has kind of a weird cadence. It is kind of hard to fit into a lot of songs. And so annotation, one of the things it does is it helps me introduce sort of these longer and harder to use terms without interrupting the flow of my song. Another thing is that, songs can use figurative or imprecise language. This happens to me a lot. I write sort of somewhat conceptual songs. They aren't, here's a vocab word, here's a vocab word. They're about some big idea. And I really want to make sure my students actually know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, it's a failure, right? So the annotations arose from sort of these issues. So now I'm going to sing through an example of a song. Note these red arrows. This is a song I wrote about evolutionary biology. A lot of students misunderstand evolution. They think that evolution leads inevitably to sort of better forms, right, in sort of a general sense, that evolution plans, that it thinks ahead. And this song is about how amazing it is that evolution has resulted in the diversity of life that we see, despite the fact that it is not capable of planning. It's just Cyndi Lauper's Time After Time. Genes slipped through generations blindly in search of you, shaping and shaped by your ancestors that they flowed through, each birth changing, gained or cast aside. The past hides inside of us. Change over, no planning needed, just selection and a little chance. All of your parents lived long enough to find romance. Genes evolved to make us. They never knew. They never needed to. They don't think, they don't want, they don't understand. Change over time, but they urgently replicate and expand. Change over time, and our lives are spelled out in their double strands. Change over time, and we hold just one pair of each cradled in our hands. Change over time. All right, so if we look at this, you can see that red text is what I mean when I talk about annotations. And these, these words, they are designed to in some way supplement the main text. The arrows are there to remind me where I should advance the slide, right? So I need to push ahead the slide. I don't put all the text up at once because I want to be sure not to, overwhelm the students any more than I'm already potentially doing by showing all the lyrics. So let's think about the complications of annotation, right? So there are some potential issues, and sort of the most obvious is information overload. Well, if we stuff too much information into our slides, it becomes difficult for the students to follow along with it all. And we lose their attention. The whole might be less than the sum of its parts, right? So one of the solutions to that is to keep it short. We don't want our annotations being very long. They might be just a term that describes in more literal language the figurative expression used. They might be a very short description of something, but you don't want to use a lot of text. Now, this restriction can be relaxed somewhat in areas where the song has less information. So, for example, you can just sort of put in more annotation if the song is slower. Even if the song is relatively fast, there are often choruses, and during those choruses, there's often, not always, but often a lot of repeated words, right? So if you're saying the same words over and over again, the students can pay a little less attention to that and a little more attention to the notes that you put in. And at the ends of verses, you can sort of slow down. It sort of slows down, right? You have a chance to take a break and let the students read things. You can also slow down as you are singing, right? So you can be doing your singing, you can slow down a little bit and take a little time to let the students read the line before you continue on. And finally, I personally I give my songs after I've already sort of taught the material, and I think preparing the students beforehand really helps. Sometimes I'll have a complicated concept that I want to allude to briefly in my song. I don't want to spend a lot of time on my song, and so I just can put a brief mention of, it's basically really more complicated than that in my song if I've already explained that in detail previously. So let's sing another song that kind of illustrates a few of these ideas. This one's not a parody. It's one of my few songs that I've written the tune to. It's about diffusion. My love is diffusing from me into you. Like oxygen leaving my veins turns them blue. You're semi-permeable, my love goes through. But you are so loveless, none comes back from you. So I can describe these terms in different ways with these annotations. Like when I say with other factors, that's discussing the fact that it's more than just oxygen leaving the veins that turns them blue. There's more to it going on, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on the short song about that. So I discuss that stuff in advance. And then I can put an extra long sort of description of what's going on with the song at the end because the students will have a chance to listen to that. All right. So complication 2 is mechanics. I am not skilled in any instrument of any sort, and that makes my life easy because when I want to advance a slide, I just push a little button on my computer or my little remote. But many of you have actual musical skills and you like to play instruments along with your songs. So that presents some mechanical difficulties. My thoughts here are largely theoretical because I have not really been in this position myself, but one of the possibilities is to recruit student volunteers, as Dargan may have done. I'm not sure if I was a student, but if you recruit someone to help push the buttons for you, I can imagine that being a pretty sought-after position for my songs, at least. A student would be happy to come up. Their responsibility is just when the red arrow comes up, you push the button. I think they'd be interested in doing that. So that's one option. Another option is foot pedals. So I looked around, and on Amazon, you can buy foot switches that plug right into your computer, so you could just push with your foot to advance the slides. I kind of love this idea. I kind of want to get just one of these for my everyday usage, but this appears to be an option. So I think the mechanical difficulties, while they might be real, if you're interested in using annotation, I don't think they would stand in your way. Okay, so complication 3, I just want to mention briefly. We want to sing when we're educating for a few reasons. And one of those reasons is that we can use rhymes and cadence to aid our recall of terms and words, right? So the second you step out of the song and you're just providing information in an annotation, you lose that advantage. So personally, the use of annotation makes songs easier for me to use, so I use more songs. So I end up deciding to do that, right? But there is a real trade-off. I think that that's a reasonable issue with this approach. Okay, so assessment. So I sang a bunch of songs for my biology classes over the course of a year. At the end of each semester, I give the students a series of statements and ask them about it. And one of the statements was the notes and illustrations, some of my songs have illustrations as well, presented alongside the lyrics on the PowerPoint were useful. And 93.6% of the students did find them useful. They responded either strongly agree or agree, which suggests there is, some benefit to these lyrics to students, or at least obviously perceived benefits. And this citation on the bottom talks a little bit more about, other attitudinal assessment that I did about various things about my singing. And also talks about sort of my approach to writing parody songs. Again, I figured, but I'm fifth person in this panel. Other people would have already talked about it, so I didn't put a lot about that in here. But if you want to look at that, that's in this paper. So I think that this can be useful. A few notes I was thinking of as other people were talking is, Kevin Furland was saying that the videos could be helpful, and I think that annotations often serve a related purpose as video, right? They allow you to put in a little extra information. They're much easier to do than a professional looking video, right? Now, I think a professional video, especially accompanying lyrics, might be more helpful than annotation, right? But these annotations are very trivial to put together, which is a major advantage in our time-strapped lives. One other note is I was thinking that this could potentially be a useful technique for people who wished to present other people's material, right? So if you're using a song that someone else has written and you don't have a lot of songwriting skills, you could use annotation to personalize the song to your class. And that could work either with a recording or with, putting up the lyrics and you singing them, right? Sometimes we cover material a little differently in one course than it might be covered in some other course. If you can personalize and make it yours and make connections to other things you've discussed while still using the songwriting work put in by someone else, that seems like it could be helpful to people. Again, I don't typically use it that way because I write my own songs, but that might be something to explore. Okay, so here's one more song, one more example, and this is a song with a central metaphor of cancer as sort of a disintegration of a relationship that typically exists between the cells in our body. And it's a communication failure, and that is what the song Hello by Adele is all about. I got to be careful with this one because it's a big range, so I need to start in the right place. Hello, I can't hear you. We were once the same before mutations, when we split in two, before I learned to be free. And now I've just about forgotten everything I used to be. Each small difference builds between us as I change lifestyles. Hello from the other side. I've divided 1,000 times, but when you call and say that I've gotta slow down, I don't listen, 'cause my genes have had a breakdown. Hello, I've metastasized. Now I refuse to suicide. I'm immortal and I grow in other tissue. I bring in new blood, and I'll happily grow over you. I don't care. Wait a second. My taskbar is blocking things out. Well, those are some more annotations, but let me continue. Oops. Hello, how are you? Seems this body that we share is somehow failing now. I'm sorry, even all my oncogenes won't allow me to keep growing once the nutrients stop flowing. It's no secret that each body is running out of time. But something lasts though we have died. Through germ cells we are purified. As we age, our cells maximize their own fitness. But each new birth keeps our variation suppressed for a while. All right, so in conclusion, annotation can be an easy and effective way to communicate whatever doesn't quite fit in your song. So I'd like to thank the organizers of this conference. I'd like to thank Kutztown University for providing me with students and my students for letting me sing to them. This website here, rickheineman.weebly.com, gives access to a number of my papers as well as some of the songs that I've written, some of which don't appear in papers. So thank you very much. That's all I got.